Okay, so I'm here to review the Clamcase Pro. Just got it in the mail this morning. And let me open this up and take a look at it. Just to give you some perspective, I am a science teacher, and I use the iPad significantly in the classroom as both a teaching tool as well as a tool to help me run my classes, etc. So I use it quite a bit, and I also use a MacBook Pro. And what I really wanted to be able to do was to, as much as possible, replace my MacBook Pro with my iPad. And clearly, the most difficult part of that is not having the ability to create documents in the iPad with a keyboard. So here it goes. And there were a lot of options out there, obviously. But this is the one that seemed like the best bet. So here's Clamcase. As everyone says, it's pretty nicely packaged, for sure. I'm not sure. Everyone seems to say that it looks a lot like Apple packaging, but I don't know. Apple packaging is pretty unique in terms of its simplicity, and this has a lot of stuff on it. Keep in mind that if this was the iPad, all you would see is that sort of side view of the iPad with nothing else on the cover here. So this clearly is trying to look like it, but it's not pulling it off. Let's see what it looks like inside. Pretty nice packaging. Nice cushion at the top cover here. And here's the fella itself. Good looking thing. So immediately, the plastic cover that actually holds the iPad itself is a matte finish, except for the little design, which is shiny here. And it's definitely plastic, obviously, and it's a white color. And it looks like it's pretty well made thing. I'm looking sort of at the edges, and it's okay. I mean, it's not like an Apple product. There's a little bit of a gap. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but there's a slight gap here. Let me just make sure I try to get this to focus on this piece right here. Maybe it isn't working, but there's a slight gap here such that if I press it down, it actually sticks together, but it's already flush here on the sides. So we'll see. I mean, that has something to do with simply plastic. There's going to be a little bit of warping. Okay. So there's a plastic cover over this. So let me go ahead and remove that tape-like material from around this. It's interesting that it has the protective plastic on the bottom of the clam case that I'm taking off right now, but it doesn't have it on the top, the part that holds the actual iPad. I'm not quite sure why they chose to only protect one surface and not both. And you can see here I'm not sure how I'm going to remove this plastic, but I'll probably have to open up the clam case itself. Okay, so let's take a look at the inside here. It's a very stiff hinge that's holding it open right now, so keep that in mind. Although it doesn't make any sound. I thought it was going to be sort of a squeaky thing. Here's the card that shows you how to install your iPad. And the plastic case itself, pretty flexible. It feels a little bit like, boy, if I played with it too much, I might snap this plastic. So that's a little frightening here. I'm going to try to work on removing this plastic from the hinge itself. I would definitely be afraid of opening and closing it by a corner without having the iPad in there to support it. It does feel a bit like I would snap it. It's a pretty flexible plastic top here. Goodness. Not sure how to go about taking out this plastic from the hinge. I think it's perforated, so that helps. And I thought this would be a little bit more rubberized. They sort of market it as something special. Well, I guess it is somewhat rubberized there. And oh, bro, let's see. There we go. If I flip it all the way back now, I can more easily take off the protective plastic. Keyboard looks pretty nice. It certainly has the aluminum surrounding the keyboard. Keep in mind, this is something that I always wanted to confirm, but nobody ever says it in any of the reviews. The actual area in which the keys are hanging out has plastic around it. It's only the surface surrounding the keyboard that has this thin aluminum. Okay, so it's plastic in here, the same white plastic that you see here on the cover. Does look pretty nice. Not quite the same sheen as what you see in a MacBook Pro. It's a little bit, perhaps, shinier. I do like the hinge has a little bit of a grip to it, and certainly I could imagine if I were holding it in the tablet form, I would simply grab onto this side rather than grabbing on this side, so I wouldn't activate the keys. Of course, I could turn off the keyboard if I wanted to with this switch, but it seems like that's a pretty easy thing to do. And I do use this in the classroom quite a bit. We have an Apple TV set up in the classroom, and so I do a lot of sort of displaying what I have on my iPad to the front of the classroom on a screen so the students can see what it is that I'm writing. Okay, so let me go ahead and insert my iPad and tell you what it's like. Whew, very stiff, folks. A little bit scary. It's sort of, hold on, it's sort of odd. Yeah, it doesn't quite come completely together in the front here. There's a bit of a gap. That would be something you would never see for an Apple product. It would be flush and really to very tight tolerances, whereas this looks a little bit made in China. Okay, so there's a gap that exists here. May not be substantial, but it's certainly there. All right, let me go get my iPad and insert it in there. Okay, here I have my iPad, 4th generation. It's inside currently a Portenzo case, which is a really nice case. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a keyboard, so that's its limitation. But it's a good-looking case if any of you are interested in that sort of thing. Yeah, anyway, I should probably do a review on the Portenzo case at some point. So, taking out my iPad from the Portenzo, put this guy aside, and I have the white iPad, and the white of the iPad doesn't quite match the white of the clam case itself, because number one, the clam case is a matte finish as opposed to a gloss finish, and it's slightly more towards the blue end of the spectrum, whereas the white frame around the iPad is more towards the sort of, well, it has sort of a warmer tone to it. All right, so interestingly, it's easier to open the clam case than it is to close it back down. So it takes a lot more, there's a lot more resistance in opening it up. So I'm going to try to do this without looking at the instructions on how to insert it, which may be a dangerous thing, but here we go. And I can see that it says insert here, so go ahead and see if I can just pop it in. Oh, pops in very easily. All right, so there you go. Notice that I have it back at a pretty substantial angle, but that it's not flopping. I thought it would actually flop at this level, but it's nice that it's not flopping over. And this would be a really nice angle, frankly, for the typing. Looks pretty cool, I have to say. Having the white looks pretty nifty. In fact, let me do this. I'm going to insert my iPad 2 and show you what it looks like with the black However, oh, there we go. Pretty easy. Super easy, in fact, to remove it. That wasn't bad at all. I just sort of picked up this edge right here, and it pops out. But there's no way it would just pop out on its own. You definitely would have to pop it out there. So let me get my black iPad and show you what that looks like. Okay, this is an iPad 2 in an old case. And you can see it's got the black frame around it. So do the same thing here. Insert this bad boy. Oh, geez. This is the one thing I have to make sure I remember. The orientation lock, it's important to make sure you have that thing flipped so that it can change its orientation, because once you put it in, it's not accessible. Orientation lock is not accessible. So here we go. I'm going to pop that bad boy in. There it is with the black frame. And looks pretty good. I would say the white looks a little bit better, only because of the light accents all around it. It actually, what it does is it makes the iPad screen itself look considerably smaller because it's in black mode. I don't know if that makes any difference to you, but it certainly has a different look to it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you how easy it is. Again, I'm going to pop it out. Piece of cake, popping it out. And put this guy back in. And doesn't feel like it's sitting in there quite as much. I think the iPad 2, since it's a little bit thicker, is a little bit harder to put in. So there you go. iPad 4, I'm sorry. Okay, so now what I'm going to try to do is get it to pair. And again, I'm going to try to do this without the manual. There's a little Bluetooth symbol on the keyboard down here in the lower right hand corner, so I'm just going to hold that bad boy down. See if anything happens. So far nothing is happening, even though I have Bluetooth turned on. Nothing. Alright, let me go into settings. Bluetooth is on. My big Jambox is showing as a device. Oh, smart Jang. Okay, I actually have to turn on the keyboard first. So I just turned it on, and now I'm holding down the little Bluetooth button. All right, maybe I need to check the manual. Yeah. Oh, it came up now as an option as I was doing that. So I'm tapping Clamcase keyboard. It's saying it's connected. Okay, so that's big. And I want to see what happens here. So it does automatically turn off. What I'm noticing here is that it's interesting. There is a, if you notice here, again, I hope you can see this. It's slightly opened. See, it doesn't sort of magnetically hold together there. You can squeeze a little bit more. And that's for, there's a couple things there. I think number one, the stiffness of the keyboard, or the hinge does that. And number two, the little rubber protectors that prevent the keyboard from scratching the surface of the iPad also prevent you from having that come all the way forward and touching down. So perhaps what I saw earlier isn't too bad. But it definitely, I can even see that it's not touching the rubber protectors. The top of the lid, or the iPad itself, is not touching those rubber protectors. And even if I squeeze the hinge here, it's still there. the gap. But it's not too bad, and it automatically turns off the iPad, so I suppose that's not that big a deal since it does turn it off. Okay, so this thing does become a beast in terms of its weight. It's certainly heavier than the combination of my Portenzo and the iPad, but it's not awful. And frankly, from my perspective, weight is less important to me than how compact something is. The fact that this is compact enough to be able to fit in a small satchel so I can go around campus with this thing all the time. All right, so opening this up, not a big deal. Thought it was going to be an issue, but it really is pretty easy to open up there. Nice and solid. Good surface on which to type. It is strange, I feel like I need to have a little touchpad here in this area. Really does seem like I would want to have one there, maybe in the future. And let's see how this all types here. I'm going to actually go to my Notability app and open up a new note and do the typing mode. So here it is. Just going to see if it immediately starts. I think I have to tap something. There we go. So I'm coming around so I can go on the other side. You can see this more readily. Could easily get used to this. There's no delay. Ooh, that's a little weird. Separate the period from the... And I'm a touch typist, so it really is pretty easy to do this and not feel like I'm limited. I don't know what this is, this little battery button. It's flashing. I'm not sure really what that means. It probably means that I have enough battery on there. I like the fact that the shift buttons are large here, return button is large, that these arrow keys are independent and aren't going to... the fact that there's an arrow key, let me just point this out to you. On a lot of these keyboards, the arrow key that you see right here is actually up here between the shift key and the question mark key, which to me is kind of idiotic. Frankly, it makes no sense to have it there. So the fact that they did it more like what it looks like on a MacBook Pro makes a lot of sense from a usability standpoint. So there you have it. I so far like it, and I'll probably have to do a follow-up on this review at some point after I use this, particularly as I use it in the classroom. Because the reality is, in the classroom I'm rarely going to be using the keyboard. In the classroom I'm going to be using it much more in the tablet function, like so. Whoa, that's interesting. Just spinning that around without trying to get off, I clearly inadvertently tapped on the keyboard and it put in some nonsense characters. And so let me see if I just flick this off. Yep, doesn't have any impact. And it really doesn't feel that significantly different from what it's like to have my keyboard what it's like to have the iPad without the keyboard. I could easily imagine doing the same thing I normally do in the classroom, which is to write on the screen and have it show up. And people complain about how weird it feels to have your fingers on the keys. I don't think there's not really an issue there. I certainly feel them, but it's not going to be something that bothers me. I probably won't even think about it. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. I like the way it seems to be working for me right now. Now here's the last thing I'm going to do. The degree to which... Oh, it's actually, with the iPad in there, it's much easier to move this thing. So it really makes a difference. The iPad stiffens up the whole back plate. All right, so let's see. If I turn on this thing, will it immediately reconnect and allow me to use the keyboard? Yep, no delay there. So the keyboard is on and usable. So really it took no time at all for it to recognize that. That's pretty cool, because I've had other keyboards, an external keyboard, where it takes a good 5 to 10 seconds for it to actually be recognized by the iPad, and that was not the case here. So that's really nice. All right, hope this was a useful review for you folks, and so far, so good.